So I've done some quick initial testing with Firecracker Rin, which I'll call her Fire Rin from now on because Firecracker is a mouthful. So in this video, I'll present to you 3 things. The first one is how much increase is a max 4-star weapon to the 5-star weapon. The second thing, if you pull Fire Rin but you don't have Matoi, is it still worth it? And lastly, probably the reason why you click on this video, if you already have A6R0 Ann, should you still get A0R0 Fire Rin? Will your A6R0 Ann beat A0R0 Rin? And also reminder, these are just initial testing. More testing still need to be done throughout the week for next week's guild boss for SOS. So this video is just a quick first impression, but it should still give you an idea of the differences between the 3 things that I said just now. So Fire Rin A0, a melee attack can evolve into Yanhua Slash. For those curious, Yanhua means firework in Chinese. So basically this Yanhua Slash can do big damage with her sword, and it can also activate Fire Technical. And when Fire Burn is activated, Fire Burn is basically using a fire move on a burn target, so you want burn all the time. So basically what this means is that Fire Burn is usually 2% damage dealt increase, but for Rin's case, it's gonna be 20%. So just on A0, technical damage is already higher. This haven't even taken into account Matoi. Matoi will more than double this number with her technical precision. So for skill 1, AoE fire damage and increase crit rate by 10% for 2 turns. I think this is the first skill that increases the crit rate, if I'm not wrong, at least for A0. Then for 1 turn, the Yanhua Slash will do more damage. Skill 2 is basically some sort of DOT and inflict burn, which you probably won't really use in MLD. The regular 6-turn rotation, you probably won't use this, but you're probably gonna use this for DOD, the weakened state, because this thing is a debuff, and you can apply debuff like 1 or 2 turns earlier. And then the skill 2 will also inflict these year-end flames. It's another different type of DOT. On top of burn, your target will also take damage from this year-end flame stack. Skill 3, you increase damage, then your melee attack evolves into Yanhua Slash, and then this skill 3 will wear off after you use Yanhua Slash. So it only lasts for like 1 singular action, technically, which is on Fire Rin's action herself. The skill also has a cooldown of 1 turn, so you cannot spam the skill 3, at least for A0. Then Yanhua Slash basically does pretty big damage and can activate technical. So this description is basically the same as the A0. Can activate technical, and the technical damage is 20% instead of 2%. Then highlight is an AoE fire damage that increases her own attack and damage for Yanhua Slash for 2 turns. So passive is you do more damage to burn targets. And then at the start of battle you increase attack for 2 turns. But when Rin or another ally triggers technical, you buff more attack. This is a very high amount, 51%. So I'm not going to go through all the awarenesses, I'm just going to go through A1, because most people won't be bothered with the high awarenesses, so I'll save that for my final review video. A1, I haven't tested it, but it looks really good. The reason is because extends the duration of Flaming Sword Dance, so the skill 3. So now the rotation becomes 3-1-1, 3-1-1 instead of 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, which means that in a 6-turn rotation, you will do 1 extra hit of the skill 3, the fire melee attack. So it increases from 3 to 4, which is a 33% damage increase technically, right? 3 to 4. And on top of that, you also increase crit damage by 40%. This one is a skill 2 one, this one we don't care, we don't really care at the moment, but skill 1 will give you 40% crit damage increase. So on top of increasing the number of melee attacks from 3 to 4 in a 6-turn rotation, you also increase crit damage by 40%. That is massive. I wouldn't be surprised if this is like 30 to 40% score increase. So now we can look at some data. The first one here is a 5-star weapon against a max 4-star weapon. This is a very typical 10%-ish increase from max 4-star to a 5-star weapon for DPS. 10% is very standard. So the 5-star weapon just gives you more attack, gives you crit rate, which is very nice, makes it easier to reach the cap. This 16% is basically like a rebellion. Then to increase your damage when you do technicals. So just some damage increase. For the 4-star weapon, the max one, you have 24% attack, then 43% attack when you use the enhanced melee attack. So yeah, whether or not you wanna get the weapon is up to you. But of course, again, similar to all the results I'll show later, this is only like 1 test. I assume to do a lot more testing. So if you're interested to see all the results, make sure to subscribe, because I'll upload my final review video in probably like 9 to 10 days time, after I've done more testing with this week's bosses and also next week's bosses. So next thing, let's look at Matoi and Howler. So if you pull Fire Rin and you have Howler, but you don't have Matoi, is it bad? Well, not really. It's only a 13% increase if you use a Matoi over an Howler. It's actually lower than I expected. I was expecting a 20%. It's still an increase, quite an increase, 10%. Anything more than 10% I think is a pretty big jump, but not as high as I was expecting. so you can still pull if you don't have Matoi. Matoi will obviously enhance more, but it's not as high as I thought. But yeah, I still need to do more testing to double confirm this. It's only again one result only. The final thing that people are probably most curious is FirecrackerRin A0R0 against an Ann A6R0. If you already have a maxed out Ann, should you still pull Rin? Well, we can look at this first. This is using a Matoi team. You can see that Rin still outperforms Ann by a pretty significant number, 28% increase. Meanwhile, for a Howler team, it's around a 20% increase. That is still a significant amount. One thing I will have to emphasize is that I'm using a guildmate's Ann, not my own Ann, because I don't have A6R0 Ann. And my guildmate's Ann has a different substat as mine, because we are different accounts. And my guildmate has higher crit multiplier, higher damage multiplier, but lower attack and crit rate in terms of substats. So overall, I think my guildmate's Ann overall has a lower substat. So realistically, this number is probably a bit lower, but still, it's quite a big increase. And it's not really surprising to me. I'm actually very confused why people say A6R0 Ann is about the same as A0R0 Rin, because just in terms of numbers itself, Rin already looks much stronger, and more importantly, Rin gets crit rate. Because of that, it becomes easier to cap her crit compared to Ann. Ann does not get any crit at all, so you have to use an external support for that. Meanwhile, for Rin, she gets 16% from weapon and another 10% from the skill 1, so that's 26%. So I think to explain a little bit why this is 28.2, this one is 19%. It makes a lot of sense because this is a Matoi team, and here already shows you that Matoi is better, obviously, than Howler for FirecrackerRin team. So the higher increase here is expected because Matoi fits better with FirecrackerRin compared to Ann. That's why it's a 28 here. And this is only at 20 because it's only Howler. Howler doesn't buff technical damage. So Rin and Ann is going to be an equal playing field, if that makes sense. So yeah, Rin still outperforms Ann if you're using a Howler team. So you don't actually need Matoi. Howler is fine. It also shows here 13.4% if you're using Matoi. I mean, it's up to you whether or not you think the number is big enough. 13% is quite a significant amount, but it's fine to have Rin, but no Matoi. I also want to test Ki also, but I expect the increase about the same as Howler, probably around 20% also, because Ki has no technical. But I expect about the same increase. I'll test that and show it to you next week. But the final thing I want to clarify, because if you'll notice, you can see that Matoi here is 93.9, Howler is 894.8. This doesn't mean Howler is better than Matoi, by the way, because I said it here, Matoi versus Howler use different sustains. This one I was using A0 Cherish, this one I was using A1R1 Marion. So A1R1 Marion is better here because the boss hits harder and it's easier to activate a 5-star weapon. So should you pull FirecrackerRin? Honestly speaking, if you're A6R0 Ann, I think it's fine to skip. I did show that there's quite a big jump. If your Matoi is like more than 25%. If you don't have Matoi but you have Howler, it's a 20% increase. That is quite an increase, but I think it's still okay. I think it's better to just save your gems for another character that has a type that doesn't exist in the game yet. Because having 2 Fire Sweeper is a little bit awkward, okay? One is enough, and Ann, A6R0 Ann still works fine. So I think skipping is fine.